Democracy won this week. Our country won this week, and our forefathers once again showed us that a country based on values, religion, hard work, and a strong moral compass will deliver a strong America for generations. Last week I spoke about the flag that hangs over my desk, a flag that I had made to remind me every day about how this country was founded and what has kept it strong for 250 years. I apologize that this is a bit redundant, but the importance of why this country was founded and how it continues to resonate is worth repeating even more now that democracy has won. We the people, the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. These, the first words that set the stage for the document that guides us. How powerful thy statement. The power given to the people in the first line, the power given to create the Constitution that governs those within. The power to ensure internal tranquility, to establish justice for all, and to establish this for infinite generations. The brilliance of those founders must never be forgotten. Last Tuesday, we the people have spoken. Shall not be infringed the Second Amendment to the Constitution, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not or ever be infringed because of the necessity to have security of a free state and the security to protect your family. In modern times and throughout history, the demise of an individual's freedom has always started with the disarming of the people. We have stood up and spoken loudly on its importance. We have held our leaders to a high standard, and in this new age in front of us, we will continue to remind them that this right shall not be infringed. Government of the people, the Gettysburg Address. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That these dead, that these soldiers, that these officers, that these servants of our country and of our people, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. It is amazing that this line still rings so true today. That this nation under God shall give a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Truly, the words are incredible. With malice towards none, the second inaugural address of President Lincoln had stood the test of time. With malice towards none, with charity for all. As God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work as we bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves with all nations. It is time to give back to one America. It is time to lift up those from the trenches and show them greatness. It is time to finally abandon the thinking that to ensure equality, we must bring down those that sit on the top. We must now go forward with malice towards none. E pluribus unum. Out of many one. Out of many one. Out of many religions, out of many ethnicities, out of many cultures and backgrounds and languages and colors and races, out of many we stand as one strong, God-fearing nation that is not going to give in to tyrants, to temptation. Our strength has been and will always be standing as one. And at no other time in recent history we must look to thy neighbor and commit to them that we now stand as one. Judged by the content of their character. Martin Luther King, 1963. We must strive to judge others by the content of their character, by the integrity of their actions, by their devotion and their compassion. We must strive, if we are to keep a free nation, and we must strive to judge thy neighbor not by the color of skin, or by the God they worship, or anything else that makes them different from us. But our judgment must lie with how they live their lives and their commitment to stand up and fight to help us live ours. And let that judgment begin today. A republic if you can keep it. Benjamin Franklin. A republic. We have a republic if only we can keep it. Those founders did not set forth a government that was never to be touched again. They set forth a system that would continually take the people by which it was given its power. It would take the people to continue to breathe life into it. Adams wrote, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion." Our Constitution is designed only for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly inadequate for others. It is by these standards that we have a republic, but only if we can keep it. And this week we've shown that we are worthy of keeping it for another generation. Liberty once lost is lost forever. Philadelphia, 1775, a letter from John Adams to Abigail Adams. When looking for important lines to add to the flag over my desk, this letter made one of the most impacts on me. Our founders were so forward-thinking, so brilliant, that you'll find no other choice but reflect on their words. Just listen to his words. But a constitution of government, once changed from freedom, can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever. When the people once surrender their share in the legislature and their right of defending the limitations upon the government and of resisting every encroachment upon them, they can never regain it again. 250 years ago, the founders of our nation told us that if we lose this, it will never be regained again. Last week I asked, are we even listening? And this week, happily, I'm proudly to report, we have listened. Join or die, Benjamin Franklin. Join or die. Join together as one or die alone as many. The strengths we always bring to man is that we have chosen to recognize our differences as our strengths and have committed to join together as one nation with the unbreakable power of providing freedom to all. Join together or die alone. Today, we have once again chosen to join together for our country and for humanity. Our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. The last line of the Declaration of Independence. And today, we are able to stand and reaffirm that commitment of our forefathers, and as they wrote. And for the support of the Declaration, with the firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. As I mentioned before, these quotes that I have read are on a flag that I made that hangs above my desk. They remind me every day that we have an obligation to protect our own freedoms, to ensure peace and prosperity for the next generation, and it reminds me every day that what we believe to be difficult times is really tomorrow's history on how we persevered through wars and poverty and adversity and tyranny. Persevered to rise above like the men and women before us. This is our obligation to our country. And this week, we've collectively said we are ready to make this country great again. We now must unite the country as one and each work to deliver that promise to the fellow citizens who may not have believed in this movement. We all should be proud to once again say, we are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. OnTarget is next. Good afternoon. Welcome to OnTarget. We're broadcasting live from the studios of LAPD Firearms Range and Training Facility. That's located at 999 999 Bethel Road. We are just west of 315. If you haven't been here, not sure why you haven't been here. We've been here about 11 years now. Definitely a nice place to come check out. Guys, I'm your host today, and well, I guess I am your host today. Kind of abandoned by everyone, but that is okay. Here in a little bit, I got a good friend of mine, Lieutenant Brian Steele, is going to jump on with me, and we got a lot of stuff to get to. So, what a historic week this week. I'm actually kind of wiped out from the week. It has been a busy week, both nationally and locally. And so, let's get started. We are the owners of LAPD Firearms Range and Training Facility and are active in law enforcement. But for 1 hour on Saturdays, we put together a group of firearm experts to discuss new products in the market, training tips, and oftentimes political topics surrounding the Second Amendment. We've always committed, though, to bring you the facts about our industry and help listeners and customers with safe, responsible ownership of firearms. And you know what? We actually might get back to talking about firearms here in these coming months. Since 2020, we've really focused on a lot of law and order topics, a lot of politics surrounding the Second Amendment, but hopefully here with this election kind of beneath us, hopefully get back to talking about firearms and the right to keep and bear arms and new products and all of that fun stuff. But I wanted to start by thanking last week our Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, for jumping on with us, a good friend of ours, and man, did he deliver, him and his folks delivered a safe and secure election in Ohio. What a standard for others to watch, especially now when we look at some of these states like Arizona and Nevada, which I think are still counting ballots out there. But Mr. LaRose, Frank, he did a great job, and we our hats are off to him. Also, I think it's important to thank for all those who worked so tirelessly the last couple years, and that's anywhere from the president and his people to our good friend locally, Bob Paduchik, who is in the inner circles with the president, helped him bring home the victory within the law enforcement community. Of course, our Ohio's own J.D. Vance, someone who came from obscurity, really, someone we really didn't know much about, who has been thrust onto the stage, and wow, did he really answer the call. Really comforting knowing that that's the next generation, a young generation that will be there for us going forward, someone who gets it, someone who cares about everyone, and we look forward to having him as the vice president. Of course, congratulations to our good friend Bernie Moreno. Exchanged texts with him this week. That's great to have him there in place. We know that he is a supporter of the Second Amendment. We know that firsthand. We've had opportunity to shoot with him and to have him in the store and talk to him and get to know him firsthand. So that is something that we're super excited to have him in the Senate and representing Ohio. It will be interesting to see who Governor DeWine puts in that Senate seat that J.D. Vance is going to be leaving for, but that's stuff I'm sure we'll talk about in weeks to come. Also, we shouldn't look beyond to our Attorney General, Dave Yost, and Lieutenant Governor Husted, all who've been on the show numerous times in the last couple months talking about the importance of this election. And man, it looks like we did come out and people did realize how important it was, and they did get out and vote. Today on the show, as you see, they kind of left me with no one, but that's okay. I have Lieutenant Brian Steele, my good friend, coming on to join me here in a little bit about something this week that happened that really was not very good. Something happened right here in Columbus, Ohio, in Franklin County, and it was the verdict of Adam Coy. And it was not what we were hoping for. It's really unbelievable when you look at the facts on how a jury could have convicted Officer Coy on murder charges. It's something we've talked about a lot on the show, a lot about the standards by which law enforcement are judged, and it just did not look like that they used those standards. And those are standards, and we'll talk with Brian about it. Those standards aren't standards that are some made-up philosophy or theory, in a classroom. These are Supreme Court rulings that governs how we act, how law enforcement acts, and when you judge the actions of a law enforcement officer when they have to use force, it is something that we've used for 40 years, and it just doesn't seem like the jury took that into consideration like they should have in this case. So we'll talk to Brian coming up here. We'd like to thank our sponsors, U.S. Law Shield, Jackson Egress Windows, Black Wing Shooting Center, Rivers Edge Cutlery, CNS Engraving, and of course, LEPD Training Facility, all who make the show possible each week. Guys, also wanted to put a shout out there too. If you missed the show, you can always catch us on YouTube and Facebook. We're getting that feed a little bit better. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we will see that continue to get better. But in the meantime, you can go out there on iHeartRadio. You can go on iTunes and Spotify and Spreaker. We're out there everywhere with the podcast. So if you missed the show live, certainly go out there and check us out or pass that along to friends. Guys, let's jump to a break. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means with a President Trump presidency on the way, and much, much more. We're on Target, broadcasting live from the studios of LEPD Firearms and Range. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back to OnTarget. I'm your host, Eric. Joined today in the LEPD studios. I got no one today. Actually, I have my son sitting up here for moral support. He's running the keyboards. But besides that, everyone took the day off. I think they're still celebrating, to tell you the truth. I know I was for a good couple days this week, having watched, I think we got home at 4 in the morning that morning, which is about 5 hours past my normal bedtime. But it was one of those elections that it was worth sitting there and watch. So for the next couple minutes, I want to talk about what we think a President Trump second term means, especially to the gun industry, and also talk about a couple other things that came down the pike on election night. But when we look at a second term for the president and we reflect back on the first term, we experienced, actually the gun industry experienced some down times. I mean, there was something called the Trump slump back in his first term, and really, people weren't concerned about their safety and security for up until the COVID and the riots started. Safety and security was people felt pretty good about it. Now I know right now it's going to take some time to get back to that. So we anticipate sales still being decent for a number of months going forward, but I envision that it's going to get back to a point where there is a slump or a dip in gun sales. And we actually saw it. NICS came out this month and said that October of this year was down versus October of last year, which was an indication to us that people felt strongly that the president was going to get back in there because they weren't worried about if the other side did get in. And I firmly believe, and we know from past experience, that if Kamala was elected, we would be off the charts busy right now until January. But that's certainly not the case. So what does that mean for everyone? I think prices are going to start to trickle down. We've already started to see a little bit of the AR market coming down just a hair. You're going to see, and probably from us as well, on Black Friday, you're going to see some sales, some pretty good sales on ARs, stuff that we've put back in inventory, not knowing how the election would turn out. You might see some sales on ammo. There's no indication whatsoever going forward that there's going to be any shortage of ammo, and I hope the prices continue to come down a little bit, and I expect that they actually might, especially if we get back to a little bit more energy independence and things start to come back in the economy. So those are all good things to look forward to, I guess, if you're a gun enthusiast going forward, and hopefully our safety and security as a country and as a state come back a little bit, and gives people a little bit more comfort in knowing that they can go out of their house and not have to worry about the thugs that are out there on the street. So what other things do we think that a President Trump second term means? I think for us personally, hopefully the deregulation. We got to get agencies such as the ATF off our backs and off the backs of these gun stores. And it's not that we've ever done anything wrong. It's just the no tolerance or the attitude that there is, for a clerical error that they can send you to a hearing to have your license pulled. That's just not right. That's not the intent of these agencies. And we're confident that with hopefully a new leader of the ATF, someone in there who has knowledge of how gun stores should be and what the rule and how ATF should act, hopefully that goes forward and we can really start to get back to a place where we punish the criminals and support the stores and the retailers that are out there. So we're optimistic in that regards, and I think just too from a global standpoint, the Supreme Court. I mean, how can you? I mean, you now got to look at this and think that for years to come, the Supreme Court is going to be conservative, and hopefully with a couple more appointees during his time, hopefully that becomes even more apparent, and that can only help the Second Amendment and our right to keep and bear arms. Now, having said that, there was a couple things that occurred out there on election night that weren't really good for gun owners, and one of them comes from Colorado, which you would expect. I think that's one of the few states that the president did lose. In Colorado, voters officially approved Proposition KK by a pretty wide margin, almost 10 points. But this proposition now, they said, get this, it imposes a new tax, a new excise tax on firearms and ammunition. So just mere for the fact that you're a firearms enthusiast, you're now going to have a new tax of an additional 6.5% on everything you buy. Imagine that, 6.5% on any firearms purchased in Colorado now, and they're going to take that money and they're going to earmark it for crime victims funds, which is just a bunch of crap. But that is something those voters passed out there, and so they're going to be bound to that going forward. What else happened this week? There was a Circuit Court of Appeals on Tuesday. They overturned a lower injunction that Colorado had on adults under 21 being able to purchase firearms. Again, in Colorado, really crummy, but they have they put a law previously into place saying that if you're under 21, you can go to war, you can do everything for our country except you can't buy a firearm, and that's any firearm, any rifle or long gun. And so that with this circuit court ruling, that's going to stand, which is kind of unbelievable. So there's going to be theirs to have to maneuver and handle, and hopefully if that eventually goes up to the Supreme Court, maybe we'll get some rulings next year that will be in our favor on that. Only other thing that we thought was of importance this week, kind of an anecdotal thing. So on Wednesday we come into the store. The upbeat, it's kind of an upbeat environment, right? And we come in, and our Trump signs are still sitting out there. And as you know, those who've listened to prior shows, we've had a little bit of an issue with people, stealing our Trump signs. And about 9:30, I look out the window and I said, one of our signs is gone. And it was there when I walked in the door, so I went back and pulled the tapes and pulled cameras and so forth. And by golly, at 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, the election's done. We have the W, and here's some ding-dong pulling into our parking lot, getting out of his car, and going and stealing our Trump sign. Can you imagine that? It just goes to show you the type of people we're dealing with. And, thank goodness we have plenty. It was only out for about 30 minutes. We put a new one in. We've since taken them down, but it just goes to show you that the people on that side aren't very tolerant at times. So, well, guys, we're going to jump to the bottom of the hour news. When we get back on the other side, we're going to talk to our good friend Lieutenant Brian Steele with CPD. He's also the FOP president. Talk about something that wasn't all that good this week, and that was the verdict of Adam Coy. So, we're on target. We're broadcasting live from the studios of LAPD Firearms and Range. We will be back after the news. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to OnTarget. I'm your host, Eric, joined today in the LAPD studio. Actually, it's just me today, but a good friend of mine stopped by. A good friend from CPD, Lieutenant Brian Steele. I still have a hard time saying Lieutenant Brian Steele. That's such a good thing, though, you know?
Yeah, me too. It is a good thing. It's a good thing for my pension, good thing for my family.
Yes, it's always good to see you. It was good to see you on Halloween night.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. I can tell you, going up there to trick-or-treat, it's awesome. It's Perry Township Police Department. Cannot tell you how outstanding I think how much the community thinks of you. Yeah. And the levy passed. That's how much great things the community thinks of you.
That is great and stuff. It was always good to see you and the family that night. Brian, I invited you on today because it has been a whirlwind this week in our country, obviously with the presidential elections and the Senate races and all that. But what has really totally been overshadowed was some news that came down on Monday that was really for the law enforcement community, and it should be for the much of the community as a whole. It was devastating, and that is the verdict for the Adam Coy trial. Talk a little bit about that. That is just something that was so important, and we haven't really talked about it very much.
Yeah, so first of all, and everybody knows I'm president of FOP, and my job is to represent, advocate for officers. But and you've heard me talk many times, I don't ever tell you that we get it right every single time. I'll tell you officers get it right an overwhelming amount of time, but sometimes we get it wrong. Adam Coy got it wrong that day. He admits he got it wrong that day, but he is 100% not a murderer. The courts got it wrong that day.
They did, Brian. I mean, I really feel that way. I feel like the jury got it wrong, and I followed it closely. And a friend of both of ours, Jim Scanlon, he was part of the testimony, and it was he hit it out of the park. I mean, it was exactly what had to be said. It talked about the standards by which all law enforcement are judged. When you look at use of force amongst law enforcement, there's a standard. This isn't something that is just a made-up thing in the college classroom. This is a standard that we all look at. I mean, I think when I was writing this up today, I looked, and I think there's probably not a year that's gone by in the 30 years I've been in law enforcement that the Graham v. Connor case, the Supreme Court case, which is the standard, hasn't been discussed in some way or the other. And I just don't understand when you look at that, when you look at the objectable reasonableness, how they got to a point of guilty on murder.
What I'm worried about is, so these standards, 1982, they've been around a long time. These laws were written, these standards were enacted prior to social media. So my biggest worry, you now have a jury. A jury instructions is not to look at the news. Don't talk about this. How in this day and age do you not look at the news? How do you not look at Facebook? You pick up your phone, there's something popping up. My biggest worry is the jury had a couple days. They went home. Did somebody get to them? Did somebody try to bully them, harass them? Or were they reading the case? Stuff they were not supposed to know of because it didn't apply.
And Brian, you're exactly right. I mean, when you looked at the news media, if they happened to see that on the weekend where they took the recess, I mean, the media was, every time I saw it, I'm like, well, that's not right. I mean, every time it was the Adam Coy trial, the shooting of an unarmed black man. There was nothing else went along with that. It wasn't that there was keys in his hand. It was so sensational, and for those who didn't follow anything else and you only looked at that, well, I could see where you have an opinion on it, but it's just not law.
Members of the media refer to this as a non-emergency run, which, okay, in theory, it's a non-emergency run, and then there's no lights and sirens. But it's 1:30 in the morning. You're by yourself, residential neighborhood, just before Christmas. As you and I as lawmen know, burglaries go up around Christmas, and you have an individual that, for 20 minutes, he don't know what he's doing. He's going up to different houses. He's walking into a garage. So they'll say, well, that's not really a crime in a garage. Yes, it is a burglary. If somebody was in your garage at 1:30 in the morning, would you call the police and say, hey, when you get a chance, maybe swing by here tomorrow? You'd probably be whispering into your phone, get here as fast as you can, or you're going to be screaming, get here.
And we talked about it offline. And look at the time frame when this happened. This was December of 2020.
Yep.
We're coming off riots. We're coming off a time where sentiment towards police officers was really not good. You didn't know what was around each corner, and like you mentioned, at that time, officers really backed down. There was not. They weren't being overly aggressive at that period of time. So it just goes to show you that Adam and his partner thought this warranted. There was some reasonable suspicion here that warranted us to check it into this further.
100%. He has a duty, an obligation to check in it further. And listen, Officer Coy, he was not worried about a little bag of weed that Mr. Hill had. He was not worried about a small warrant Mr. Whelan had. He was trying to go there, de-escalate a situation, and move on. The Ferguson effect is real. We saw the Ferguson effect here after 2020 riots. When we vilified our police officers, almost every single elected official villainized our police officers. The community did. What happened? Proactivity went down. Murders rose. Over the last couple of years, the pendulum was swinging back. Officers become proactive again. It looks like you're supporting them again. After this, the ripple effects, just the shock waves, is going to overwhelm CPD and most likely the greater community.
How can it not? How can it not? When you look at this and you say, and the standard has always been objectable reasonableness, would another officer in that officer's shoes at that time, but by the standard, you can't consider 2020 hindsight. Yep. It's not knowing what we know now about it. the totality of the circumstances, and there was a lot of circumstances surrounding this, not a big crime incident, but there was a lot of what we call threat indicators that you keep in the back of your mind that, okay, this could be something. It may not, but it's definitely enough to warrant us going to the next step. And that continued over a period of time. And like you mentioned, I think the whole call was 20, 30, 45 minutes. But Mr. Hill had been doing these actions for, I think, 2 or 3 hours leading up to this. So there was something there that just didn't seem right. And so when you give a reasonable officer those circumstances, is it unreasonable to believe that Officer Coy at that time believed his life was in danger? I mean, it reads, is it whether the threat was real or perceived, and we have to stand by that. We have to have some standards that we tell our officers to go by. The allegations during the trial that, this was, totally reckless and that he didn't realize it, once he realized it, he started to make up a story. It's totally false. I mean, when you yell gun, gun, gun to your partner, that's an utterance before it even happened. When you tell your partner, hey, don't approach because the gun is still there, you see an insight into what he was seeing. I don't know how a jury looked at that and said that wasn't a reasonable action.
The juries have jury instructions, and they have to be explained and understood. If you watch the trial, you heard the jury questions, it is clear to me that they did not understand the instructions, and the court did not do a very good job explaining those instructions to them. I think the jury went in there, they did their civic duty, and I hold no fault to them. I just think they got confused, and they got this wrong based on their instructions. It went completely against Graham versus Connor.
Complete and White versus Ohio.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing is there was somewhere along the way I heard, I don't know if it was through media or maybe it was during the trial itself, where they said, well, they could have just turned around. When Mr. Hill went into the garage, they should have just left. And I'm thinking to myself, is that what we want our officers to do, just to turn? I mean, it could have very easily been a case where Mr. Hill was part of a theft and he was waiting for his partner to come out. I mean, you don't know, but you're obligated by oath to check that out. And we want our officers to do that.
Reasonable suspicion that criminal activity was afoot was 100%. You're sitting there, you're waiting for someone at 1:30 in the morning, an officer approaches you. Hey, officer, how are you? My name is Brian Steele. Here's my ID. Eric lives right here. I'm picking up. We're going to the airport. Okay, I'm going to go knock on the door. You knock on the door. Oh, hey, yeah, that's my buddy Brian. We're going to the airport. Have a nice day, gentlemen. His actions, walking away, not talking, ignoring them, just holding the phone up. Again, doesn't make a crime, but there's something going on here. We have to look into this further, and that's what he did. And to your point, do we want officers doing that, or do we not want them doing that? I'd submit to you we want them to do that, especially when it's your house at 1:30 in the morning.
Absolutely. The thing that keeps ringing in my mind is when Prosecutor Tyak ran on the premise that we promised to punish officers who succumb to the temptation to shoot. And I don't know, maybe it's a bad choice of words he used that day, but we played that over and over again. Succumb to the temptation to shoot. I mean, it's spoken from a standpoint of someone who's never been out there in the middle of the night, fearing for your life, going home. I don't know if we get any better now after Tuesday. I mean, we have a new prosecutor coming in. I don't know if that gets better. I mean, what are we going to be going forward in Columbus?
Time will always tell. Time will only tell. We'll see. I mean, our new prosecutor did not run on kind of the lawman mentality. It was more of the social warrior mentality. So we will see. We expect the prosecutor to do their job as a chief prosecuting officer. We understand it. So what I get to too, I talk about being hard on crime, being hard on people. Then sometimes the naysayers will say, "Well, are you kind of speaking out of both sides there?" The law did its job. The law found him convicted. And again, I don't think police get it right all the time. I don't think courts get it wrong all the time. I don't think prosecutors and defense attorneys get it right all the time. But majority of the time we do. But again, this time I believe we did not.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us were saying that Officer Coy wasn't responsible for it. I mean, this was a circumstance that was horrible by any aspect that you look at it. But it's not a verdict of murder.
It's not murder.
It's not.
Nope.
And hopefully, I mean, I haven't heard it, what's coming down the pike, but hopefully this gets appealed and we can, look down the road at that. But
yeah, I hope an appeal too, and that's the plan. And again, and as I said the other day in the news, there's no great thing coming out of this. No silver lining. Mr. Hill is dead. That is an absolute tragedy.
Yeah.
I pray for his family. Officer Coy's in prison. He has a family. He has kids. He has a wife. These families were completely. The impact of it is just so immense. Again, officers go out there every day. They understand the risks of this job. They'll take the risks, but these legal proceedings such as murder is just going to set us back, and the Ferguson effect is going to come back into place.
Yeah, unfortunately, I see that, and just in talking to some of my friends in law enforcement, even this last week. I mean, it is further. I mean, why go out there? Why put yourself in those positions? I mean, you really have to do some soul searching to know if this is a career for you now with what's going on. So.
Yep, and you and I know better than probably most. Who does it impact? The people that need the police the most, and that's where you'll see a rise of crime, and that's why it's so upsetting, this entire situation.
It is, and it's so disappointing too that, I mean, the election was such a positive thing this week for the nation as a whole. But then I take a step back and I look at like our city and our county, and we still got some issues to overcome with the leadership and stuff. So only time will tell, and hopefully the good prevails. So.
Yes, sir.
All right, Brian, thanks for stopping by. Lieutenant Brian Steele with CPD. Always good to see you out there. Good to see you in the neighborhoods. And thank you for being the voice out there for all of us.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Guys, we're going to jump to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more. We're going to actually talk about a little about firearms. Imagine that. We're on target, broadcasting live from the studios of LEPD Firearms and Range. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back to On Target. I am your host, Eric, joined in the LEPD studios. I really got no one here. Actually, my good friend Brian just stepped off. Always good to see him and hear from them. He is such a voice for law enforcement in our community. But we're back here now, and it is just me surrounded by a bunch of firearms. I got my son here for the moral support. He's working the computers and stuff, so hopefully that goes well in that regard. But I wanted to get back to talking about firearms. Imagine that, a little bit of a novelty, talking about guns on a gun show. We've had so many neat things come in over the last couple weeks, and I thought we'd like to show them in case you're in the market for something, or if you just want to hear something kind of neat. So let's start out, since it's the week where the president has won his re-election or a new term. Let's start out by something that we got in. We probably had these for about a month or so, right? The Glock Trump firearms. And I tell you what, when you look at these, and this is probably not going to do it justice on the camera if you happen to be watching, these are spectacularly engraved. The one here is a Glock 19, not horribly priced, priced a little bit more than your normal Glock 19, Cerakoted with a nice silver with his signature on it. This one is one of my favorites. It on one side of the grip it says preserve, protect, and defend. Has a picture of the White House. On the other side, the Bill of Rights, and the First and Second Amendments are on there. Really a neat thing. I bought one back during his first term, actually in 2016. Probably, hopefully the wife's not listening, probably will end up with one of these as well. So this one's a Glock 19, and let's see what other ones we got here. Oh, here's a 43X, very similar. It's marked in very similar fashion, but it's in a 43X, so you could carry it, and it's just so neat. I mean, the Bill of Rights, you can actually read the First and Second Amendment on the grips. It's come along so far with the ability to engrave that you can actually read this right on there. This is for sale here. We at least have one left of that. The other one I hesitate to talk about because because I won it. It is a Glock as well. It is a Glock 43X. The finish, though, and all of these are Cerakoted because once they're engraved, they need to be Cerakoted to put a finish on them, or actually Cerakoted first. This one is super neat. It has a picture of him with his fist up, says fight, fight, fight on it, and on the other side has a picture of him walking in with never surrender on the slide. You see that? Look, that's something I want for Christmas. I would be okay if this ended up under my Christmas tree. So you would take note of that. You can use your employee discount for that if you see so fit. But that is neat. So those are here for purchase. What else do we have here on the table? You know what? This has been, if you watch our show for any length of time on our Facebook or YouTube feeds, we have had this firearm sitting here in the front for probably a month now and just never have the ability to get to it today. I finally wanted to get to it because it's something that's super cool. If everyone, if you're out there, if you've been in the firearms for any length of time, you know the Walther PPK is an iconic 380. Not necessarily the smallest one out there by today's standards, and it doesn't hold the most capacity. It's an all-metal gun. This one happens to be stainless steel, but they are solid and they're historic. They've been around for a long time, made famous by James Bond. Well, they came out, and this is so neat. They just came out with it back like they've done years and years ago, but it's a new PPK in 32 ACP. Not only is it in 32, it has a threaded barrel. So with the suppressor market these days, suppressors coming back sometimes in 24 or 48 hours, you can get this, put a suppressor on it, and have yourself a really neat James Bond type of a gun in 32. 32 still very easy to get. We sell it here at the store, always have it. So come check it out. This one, like I said, is in stainless steel. Now the only thing with the PPKs, if you've ever fired one, is they are traditional double single action. So especially by today's standards, when you pull the trigger for that first time on that double action, you definitely know you are pulling the trigger. It is a long, hard double action. I probably estimate 12, 14 pounds. But every round after that is in the single action mode. Has a decocker on it, so if you need to bring down the hammer safely mid-firing, you can do so with that and stuff. So great, neat gun, a little nostalgia to it, and they're back on the market. Kind of neat to see. Certainly not inexpensive, though. They're tipping the scales right about $1,000 for these with the threaded barrel. But come check it out. And what else do we have? Oh, talk about something that has been on our table now for over a month. This is super, super neat. You know, I've always been a fan of a round that hasn't been common. It's been a little bit of a boutique round, but it has seen a new resurgence, and that is the 5.7 round. It was originally developed by FN in the early 90s, and it's kind of neat. It's a mini rifle round, but it's just about the same size as a 22 Magnum round. So if you're familiar with the 22 Magnum, about the same size, but it's a neck-down round. Really looks like a miniature 5.56 or 223, and it has some properties that are rifle round properties. So originally developed in 1990s by FN, and it really picked up steam in 02, I think 02 or 03. NATO wanted to test rounds out there to replace the 9mm. Imagine that, something to replace the 9. But some of their provisions were they wanted it to be able to go through a ballistic vest, and they wanted to go out to, I think it was 2,000 or 200 yards. I think that's what they had as the standard for what they were. 200 yards, an effective range of 200 yards. And so FN won that out. It never really went into play as much, I think, as everyone hoped. At the time, they said 40 nations throughout the world used the 5.7 in some capacity, and at one point our Secret Service used them here, but it's still a really neat round. It was kind of expensive, and it was one that you had to buy an FN 5.7 pistol or the PS90, which is the rifle for it. But now that is not necessarily the case. Ruger's come out with a pistol and rifle now. Smith & Wesson has a 5.7 pistol, all reasonably priced, and the ammo just came down for it. So now there's other manufacturers, American Eagle, I think Fiocchi, they all have a 5.7 round that's reasonable. You can probably get 50 rounds for $28, $29, which isn't that bad for a mini rifle round. The really neat thing, though, is this here. If you're watching on Facebook, you're going to have a treat on this. You know, we've always been big fans of the Kel-Tec line, and the Sub 2K has been a staple in the Kel-Tec line of guns, predominantly in 9mm or 40, but they just announced, and we got one in, a Sub 2K in 5.7. It's incredible. It really has all the attributes of a normal Sub 2K. If you're watching here, you can see this folds right in half. You can put this in a backpack, and the neat thing is you have a full 16-inch barrel on it. So imagine the 5.7 coming out of a 16-inch barrel. The normal feet per second for a 5.7 is pushing around 2,300 feet per second. Can only imagine coming out of a longer barrel now what kind of ballistics you're going to get on that. It's threaded, so you can put a suppressor on it. Again, suppressors now are super easy to get. Only 1 or 2 days, a lot of times we're seeing them coming back. So that is something. You have all the, I believe it takes the FN mag. If it doesn't take the FN mag, it probably takes a proprietary one from Kel-Tec, but I think it is the FN mag that actually goes in this. So if you have the FN pistol, it goes right in it. Super neat, really practical too. And the neat thing with the Sub 2Ks, one of the arguments has always been that if you had an optic on it, which these scream to have an optic on it, if you have an optic on it, when you went to go fold it in half, that optic would hit the other side, and you wouldn't be able to fold the gun in half. Kel-Tec a year or two ago came out with really an ingenious barrel now that swings to the side, so you can now maintain an optic on it, put it on there, have it zeroed for what you want, and then when you fold it, it just swings to the side. So really a neat truck gun, a neat car gun, a neat one, fun for the range. And the price of the ammo now is such that you can actually afford to go out and shoot it and have some fun. So with that, I would be remiss without showing my son's new gun here. He's not going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk to him about it. It is the CMMG Banshee. It's out in 5.7. I think it's been out for a little bit. 8-inch barrel. It looks like a mini AR, guys. I mean, it has the arm brace on it. You can doctor it up just like you would a 5.56. The beautiful thing behind this, though, is that the upper comes off, and because the mags are a proprietary CMMG mag that looks like an AR mag, you can take the upper off of this and quickly change this firearm into a 223, 5.56, or 300 Blackout, or something else like that. It has tons of versatility to it, and I'll have to admit, Luke, this one has turned out pretty darn neat. I could kind of see myself in that. If that ends up under the tree at Christmas time, I wouldn't turn that down as well. So super neat. If you want us to order those, we can get those in. The Banshees are super, super, super well respected as well. So no hesitation in going that route. Guys, that has been the hour. Hopefully Ohio State haven't been watching. Hopefully they're doing good over there. But we want to thank you again for not only listening today, but listening for these last couple months as we try to get the word out there about protecting our Second Amendment and about getting out to vote. And it looks like we did. It looks like the gun owners were part of the groups that just got out there and voted and did the right thing. Gave us a little hope. Gave us a little hope in our country, and hopefully going forward, some safety and security. So thanks again for spending the time with us. We'll be back on track next week. And as always, guys, let's be careful out there.